What up, everybody? Welcome back to the Yama channel. My name is Thinker St. James. This is last week's fights, and as always on Mondays, I am joined by my co-host, the Ohio player, the man who himself could possibly armbar Marcin Tybura. Chase Parton, how you doing, brother?
Living. It's always a good day. Marcin, we'll talk about him later.
Oh, yeah, you know we will. You know we will. Yeah.
Anybody can armbar this guy if he's getting Spivac.
He got Spivac. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So yeah, if you are a familiar watcher of the channel, you know how this works. But for anybody who is new, we are going to be going over every single one of the fights from UFC Fight Night Tybura versus Spivac 2 that happened last weekend. If you post anything in the chat that is unrelated to those fights, we'll come back to it a little bit later in the stream. But to get started, let's swing on down to the first fight here. And I mean, before we even get into that first fight, overall impressions of this Apex card? Anything stick out? Any interesting notes?
After my girl Stephanie, no, not really. The first fight of the night was honestly one of the better ones for me. There was some pick and choosy kind of things, but other than that, nah, this one was really not that great in my opinion. And I'm normally pretty gracious. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, so I shout out to Bloomis, the homie. Also shout out to Henry in the chat. What up, my African brother? Bloomis had asked me when on the watch along, he was saying, he had asked me how I could have so much energy on the watch along for such a crappy card is how he put it. And I said, I'm pretty easy to please when it comes to fights, man. As long as there are two people in the cage going at it in one way, shape, or form, I'm usually pretty okay with whatever it is. This one was kind of pushing that just a little bit. I said before the card started that I thought it was about a 5 out of 10 on paper. After the card had concluded, I think that I stuck with that assessment. I say that it was pretty much a 5 out of 10, which to me is like, that's really pushing it. It has to be really, really bad to dip lower than that. So it was passable, but just cutting it, in my opinion.
It's one of those ones where you look at it on paper beforehand and you question why this is why this is a lineup for a fight. And then you watch it and then you realize we expected, this is exactly what we expected. There was nothing to take away. I mean, even if it went the way that we all wanted to, this was still not going to be anything great.
Yeah, and I mean, these are the cards that have to happen. I mean, these people still need to fight to see if they deserve to be on better things, deserve better opponents, yada, yada. I mean, these are necessary types of cards at this point with the amount of fighters that we have and the fact that the organization wants to put events on every single week pretty much at this point. I mean, we're getting pretty spoiled in that regard that it's rare at this point that we go a weekend without fights from the UFC. And then, of course, outside of the UFC, there's all kinds of combat sports going on at all times as well. So, these kind of cards will happen here and there. But there were a couple of decent standout performances, and we will get to those as they come along. And the first fight of the card here was, I would say, one of those, to an extent at least. Stephanie Luciano versus Tyla Alencar. I think was her name, Tyla?
Talita?
Toledo, is that what it is? Okay, my
Think
bad.
so. Yeah, no, this one was exactly what I expected. I watched look, they fought in the Contender Series, got a draw. And I even arguably said Stephanie should have walked away with the W because Alan Carr is just not built for this. Like, she's just not good. And the fact that she was still so gassed, and I harp on this. If I watch the prediction video, I said gas like so many times because that's all you can say about her. Like, whatever she brings to the table may be good, but she just can't do it for more than like 30 fucking seconds. Like, it's actually crazy to me. And Stephanie just walked all over her. It was exactly what needed to happen. So shout out to her. The minus 160, that she should have been the heaviest favorite. I don't know, man. That was crazy.
Well, first of all, real quick, let me just give a big shout out to Vitsking, who has been off
Hey,
of the stream for a little while. We miss you, homie. You know that we're gonna get it in when you come back. Pause, but anyway,
yeah.
you know that we're gonna have a good time when things get back to normal. We'll be streaming again. But shout out to you, my dude. Back to this fight though. Yeah, I think I have a little bit of a different perception of it. I didn't necessarily think that Alan Carr gassed as much as she was undersized compared to Luciano, and also she didn't utilize the limited like abilities that she did have in that situation against Luciano, because like the thing is that she's smaller and she she was trying to keep it on the feet the entire fight. I was very surprised by that. I was like, I mean, I guess Luciano's wrestling is probably pretty decent there. I didn't get to see a lot of it, so I don't know. Maybe they showed more on the Contender Series fight than what I saw there. But because I don't remember seeing their fight on the Contender Series, that might not have been one
Okay.
that I'd seen.
Yeah, let me break it down. So Alan Carr wrestle fucks, for the two first rounds. And she's very tired at the end of it. And then the third round, Stephanie beats the hell out of her, and it ends in a draw. But when you look back at it, it's just not a good impression that Alan Carr didn't do anything against somebody who at the time didn't have any wrestling. So at the beginning of round two, Stephanie was starting to figure out how to stuff the takedowns, and it was getting Alan Carr to be very creative. And, she was starting to get it, but she wasn't doing anything. And then again, against somebody who doesn't have like a very good BJJ bag, like she's a Muay Thai person. So
Mm,
Alan Carr, she just couldn't do anything against somebody with limited skill set in that regard. And then the second fight, she wanted to keep it on the feet. And then
right.
I
So
knew what was
yes,
happening there.
yeah. So I mean, all that being as it was, then she kept it on. Was going straight stand up game. And the thing that I kept saying throughout the entire fight, pretty much, is that she like she had what appeared to at least be the intensity, but she wasn't going in and making it dirty, which when you're the smaller fighter, you can't keep it at range like she was doing. I mean, like, she's trying to swing at far distance. There's nothing that's going to be doing there. You can't, unless you're like really, really nice with your footwork, shuffle in and out is just not going to work, when Luciano is on her game. So she wasn't going in and just like being willing to take a punch to give one kind of thing. And I think that just started adding up over the course of the fight. Also, to Luciana's credit, she ramped it up throughout the course of the fight as well. Like, I think that once she started getting comfortable with what she was seeing from her opponent, the performance started to reflect that, and that's what you want to see. It's like, you download the information. We always talk about Piotr Jan dropping his first rounds, and everybody says, oh, well, he's downloading the information. That's fine if you're Piotr Jan, because, like, he does do that. He'll take it all and then utilize it. She was doing a little bit like that. I mean, she wasn't like completely inactive in the first or anything, but as she started getting more comfortable throughout the course of the fight, it started to become apparent that, okay, I don't have to worry as much about her going in and landing like a crazy combo on the inside. She's just not doing it. So
Yeah.
that was the biggest issue to me, is that she just like she wasn't making it dirty. And like, when you're the smaller fighter, unfortunately you're going to take a couple of shots to the face, but that's the game, you
Yeah.
know?
I remember, watching the original fight, I was saying Stephanie Luciano, you give her time and what she'll be able to do, with her wrestling at that point compared to what she can do back then. Like, she was showing that she had the ability, and then, at times was able to do creative stuff and like, flip the position and get a transition. So time just told the story there. That's all I gotta take away.
Well, and and not having seen that first fight, I listened to everything that you said. I put my money down on Miss Luciano, and that was a great decision. Uh, Paired with the next fight, I trusted my gut on that one as well, and that was the parlay that paid. So I made my money back in 2 fights on this card, and I was very happy with that. Had some house money to play with after that. So good first fight, though. I have to say, Luciano definitely looking like she has some potential. It's going to be interesting to see how she stacks up against somebody who is going to be willing to get in there and make it dirtier, though. Somebody who's going to be a little bit more aggressive and willing to take those punches.
Well, see, and the thing is, with Alan Carr, she did, those first 2 rounds of that first Contender Series fight, she was manhandling her, but she just couldn't keep it up. And like, with the undersize, like it is pretty impressive that she was able to do it, but she didn't come out with the same game plan. She did shoot 1 for 10, but I mean, she couldn't get a hold of her. I mean, shout out to Stephanie. I mean,
Yeah, and I guess for Alan Carr, work on your cardio. Really, I mean, that's
I've been saying it. I don't think
yeah.
she's gonna last very long. I mean, I know she's 1-1 technically in the UFC, but she's not showing much here.
Yeah, well, that's you got now. You're in that column, so that this is the time that you need to improve those skills and come out and really make a statement because you drop like your first fight, not necessarily, I mean now I guess second whatever. You drop a fight, not the worst thing in the world, but if you're starting to show a pattern of things that are noticeable, holes in the game, then that's where things start adding up for you. So have a good performance after that, and everything can be negated. But for right now, you're treading on shaky ground. So shout out to Luciano though, nice performance.
Yeah, and I'm glad you won something off this because I'll be telling you, I'll be preaching the women's prelims matchup. I'm the guy for it. I know who's coming in.
I think actually, if I saw the verdict, I believe both of us predicted the entire prelims correctly. So
yeah, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, not bad on that one. So
The
all
only
right.
hits though, those were I did so shit on the main card.
I think I did okay on the main card. We'll go through it as we get there. But yeah, it was definitely more spotty. But the prelims were pretty all right. So yeah, good first fight though. A good way to start this off. And then the second fight, Yusuf Zalal versus Jarno Aarons. I mean, man, I'm telling you, this Yusuf Zalal guy, he has leveled up his game to a place that is really impressive compared to that skid that he was on, because he was on like a 4-fight losing skid for a little while there, and I think he had a draw on top of that. So it was like 5 fights in a row that did not go his way in one way or another. He comes back, and I don't know what happened, what switch got flipped or whatever it was, but this guy is really starting to look very impressive. And to his credit in this fight, he was taking some pretty hard shots before he turned it around. I mean, Jarno Aarons was coming out with some power in his hands. It looked like he was loading up a little bit. I think that was one of my initial criticisms going in. I was like, bro, you got to watch out. You're loading up a little bit. You might drain your gas a little bit there. I don't think he even necessarily did. I just think that Yusuf was able to spider monkey his way into a really nice submission and just got it done. But he did take a couple, so I think that maybe his defense is something that he might still want to work a little bit more on. But I mean, the minus 725 on this these odds. I mean, I don't remember what my book had it, but it was a pretty big discrepancy as well, and he certainly lived up to it with that submission.
Yeah, I was just about to make that point. You have a minus 725 tag. You got to do something that makes me think that you are a gunner. So you come out and get a first run sub. I was pretty big on him. I haven't seen too much of him, but I do know he's a winner.
Yeah, well, I mean, after that fight against Billy Quarantillo, that's one. If you can go back and watch that one, if you didn't see it, that fight was, I mean, it was almost masterclass level on his part. I mean, Billy Q in one time was like, recognized as somebody who might have been like a contender. I mean, he had some hype. I remember when I first started. Well, not first started getting into the sport, but like earlier on in my days of watching it, it was like, oh, Billy Q. It was like the name just stuck out, and before I had seen him, and then he started to kind of drop off a little bit. So he is where he is now. But I mean, it's a big name in the grand scheme of things, in my opinion, and to get it done as emphatically and definitively as he did, that fight was so one-sided in his direction, Yusuf Zalal. It really was a sight to behold. I mean, that really like put a pin in my head. I was like, I don't give a fuck what your record is after a performance like that. I'm definitely riding with you. So yeah, the criticism does stand. I think that he took a couple of shots that he probably didn't need to take. I mean, Aaron's was fast. That was another note that I had, is that he was swinging with authority, and they were fairly accurate. Even though the strike numbers don't necessarily reflect that, but you know how we feel about numbers around here. Um, he did land a couple that I don't think that Youssef needed to take. So I think that maybe some defense work is necessary, and a little bit more head movement and stuff like that. But all of that being said, if that's all just playing possum, or however you want to interpret it, before you get to the end result, get to the end result, and all is right with the world.
Yeah, no, for sure. This one, honestly, though, Jarno, shout out you because you take some scary matchups. I know I didn't take you in the last fight you had either, and you showed out, and I'm pretty sure you might have even, I don't, maybe it was a finish, but either way, shout out to you for being a dog. No, it was a decision. You don't get finishes or get finished, apparently, except from
Wow.
Zalal.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I guess that is what it is. But yeah, I mean, Aaron's is like, I don't want to like count him out too much. I mean, 14-6, the losses are starting to creep up just a little bit, but I mean, there are obviously some things that he needs to work on for sure, because once Zalal had like even the slightest whiff of his back, I mean, like, it was like, I think he started off and sort of around the side and swung himself. It was
Mhm.
like, bro, you can't let that happen. I mean, like, there's a lot of real estate between those positions that you could have done something if you had been aware of what was happening. So maybe a little bit of a fight IQ issue there to an extent. Don't want to dog him too hard, but yeah, there are definitely some things that need to get worked on his part as well. But yeah, overall, really nice win for Youssef Zalal. See what happens with him next. I mean, so this is, I guess, an interesting question in general. Now, how do you think a losing streak like he was on, plus the draw, that 5-fight sequence there before his win streak that he's building now, how do you think that factors into how he gets booked going on in the future?
You must be talking about the wrong guy. There's
Zalal?
because Zalal is on a yeah, dude. He's on like a 5-6 fight win streak.
He's on a 5-fight now, but before that, he was on like a five losses. If you go back,
Three.
go back
I
a little.
mean, three in a draw. Okay, I mean,
Okay,
I
three
see,
and
but
okay, so maybe it wasn't
it's
as bad.
oh, okay. He was out of the UFC. Okay, you're right. Okay, and
Yeah,
then he
yeah,
came back.
that's right. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
what I mean. Yeah, he had been on like a
Okay,
bad
I
skid. Like,
see.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Well, now knowing that. I don't care. He's good. Hey, fuck it. Keep throwing him up there. Give him some more interesting fights. I mean, he seems to be back and better. And you can't hold a person's past against them. They gotta let him get the future going.
Yeah, well, yeah, no. Of course, I definitely agree with that. I just wonder how the organization looks at it. It's like more of a theoretical question, I guess, than anything else. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
mean, they gave him a second chance.
it's true.
So
It's true.
uh he could have just been down and out and but they obviously saw like maybe there's much improvement here. Maybe he is heading towards where the potential we saw before, something like that. Or maybe he's just got a big fan base in Morocco. I mean,
That could be too. No, yeah, I'm hoping that is the case. We always have to keep in mind Charlie Olives. He's the greatest example of a dude who was way down, way out, also out of the organization for a little while, came back, made his way up to being a champion. So it is certainly possible for anybody, depending on where they're at in their career, of course, that kind of thing. But for Zalal, he's still young. I think that there's some good potential in him, man. Fight over fight, he's proven himself to be somebody who deserves to get those jumps. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with him at this point. I mean, I think that he's going to need a couple of more fights to really start to get anywhere into number conversation. I mean, it's probably going to be a good amount of them based on the history, but
mhm.
if it's 3, if it's 4, if it's anything in that range, I mean, just go out and get those wins. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point you make. Like he might have a harder path now because, maybe they were, before they were thinking, okay, here's your path to victory. And then you didn't live up to what we needed. So now, now you're going to have to work a little harder for it. No nepotism kind of love here.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at exactly. Yeah, I mean, you come in as a hot prospect with, a clean record or, a single loss or whatever it is, when you're just starting out, kind of what we were seeing with the ladies before, it's 6-1 and 5-1 for the women who fought on the opener here. Those types of things, a loss or two at that point is growing pains, but then when you're in a situation like he's in, it's a little bit of a different story because you have losses outside of the organization. You have a couple coming back. I mean, it starts to be a little bit of a pattern that you don't want to have building up. but you turn the ship around, they got to recognize that as well. So it's just an interesting kind of dynamic that he's got going on. We're gonna have to see what he ends up getting as far as opponents go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the UFC can be very gracious, and then sometimes they just don't give a fuck and they'll just
Well,
cut you.
yeah, well, yeah, we saw that with R.I.P. Dennis Talulin's UFC run today, man. That
Yeah.
actually hurt my feelings, man. After what we were talking about on the last stream, after that card with a performance I didn't think was all that bad, all things considered, even though it was a loss. I mean, as I said, I think that he's got potential in another organization. So Talulin, go get that $1 million in PFL.
Yeah, man, that one really did suck because after I finally came around for him, it was really he got his flowers, man. I'm glad that we had that moment. So
Yeah, exactly. See, the organization might not have given them to you, but at least you got them here on last week's fights,
yep.
Yeah. So anyway, as far as Zalal goes, yeah, I think that what he's doing now is exactly the right way to erase the past, though. You know what I mean? Like if you have that type of rocky road situation where you got a bunch of losses that really don't reflect well as to who you are now, get the job done effectively, and that is certainly what he's done in his last 2 fights.
Yeah, no, for sure. So hope to see some good stuff coming from him. He's still at the bottom of a card on a fight night, the worst fight night. So maybe he is on the shit list somewhere, but I'm happy to see good stuff.
And so but this goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the stream on why these cards are important, because it's like, even though it's not a fireworks card, it's not a world ender of a card, you get performances like that for a guy who needs a card like this. You know what I mean? He's not going to be fighting on a pay-per-view, even on the early prelims at this point, based on all of what we've just said. So it's like you get the job done on a couple of fight nights. You're an Apex guy right now. They bust you out into, fucking UFC South Dakota. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
you move your way back up, and then there's something for you eventually. So there is value in these cards, even when they're not the greatest on the planet.
It sucks the way that you put it. I instantly just felt like, man, the Apex really is like the minor leagues right now for the UFC. Like that's just where they throw just
Not
anybody that can.
necessarily. I mean, but again, it's like the Apex is where you go to prove that you don't deserve that stipulation, that stigma.
Yeah.
I mean, Virna is the greatest example of that right now. I mean, they had her as a main event. Everybody, myself included, kind of memeing it. How is this a main event? She goes out and gets a really nice dominant performance. Now there's a title conversation in her future here. So I mean, this is exactly what is necessary based on all of those factors we talked about. So many fighters in the organization, a lot of hungry people trying to prove themselves, a lot of guys who are in one position that either can backslide or really shoot up. It's, the sport moves quickly and slowly at the same time, as we say.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So, but either way, good fight for Youssef Zalal, and thank you very much for winning because, as I said, that got me a good amount of money. So from here on out, I'm playing with house money, and a couple of these fights came through for me as well. This one included. This is Jonathan Diniz versus Carl Williams. Carl Williams surprised me a little bit in this fight in the sense that I, for whatever reason, had it in my head. If you go back and watch the watch-along VOD, I was just ragging on the guy because all I could remember about Carl Williams was that I thought he was very boring in his previous fight. That was just, I kept saying it over and over. I was like, this guy is boring. If his opponent is out, even a half step above him, he's going to be outworking him. I would say that that's still, hey, Bliss Marie, thank you very much for following. Welcome. I would say that like actually held up. I mean, that I think that Diniz was about a half step ahead. But Williams surprised me a little bit in the sense that he came out with a little bit more intensity. It just, he wasn't able to connect as much. And I think that that's where Diniz really was able to pull away.
I want to say that Carl Williams has now earned a spot on one of the lists of people who you throw against the heavy hitters because Jonathan Diniz, I think is actually how they said it. This dude was coming in like a 5 first-round knockout streak. Like this dude was supposed to be a killer. And I remember watching the last fight, and he did get a first-round knockout or second-round knockout, whatever. But Carl Williams, hey, he took some shots, and he did go a little wobbled at some points. But shout out to him for making the decision. He really, now he's got to go against Rebellis. I feel bad, but like it is what it is.
Well, I mean, that's I guess that's just your fate at that point. Yeah, I mean, that would be interesting actually, because so the way that I saw it with Williams was that he was fighting very reactionary. He was trying to get counters when there were no counters to be had, and that was the problem. If he's fighting a guy like Robellis, who is big and long and rangy, that's going to be even worse for him because he's a little bit shorter and stubbier, a little, he's a little bit more compact, which doesn't necessarily count you out as a heavyweight if you've got the power, but you have to get in there and be first. You know what I mean? You have to be leading the dance as the smaller guy. So if he's going to be trying to pick his shots from the outside and just biting on everything that comes his way, I think that a guy like Robellis could have a really easy, quick night with him. As far as Janice goes, I think that he was utilizing everything that he was seeing from Williams very well, because exactly what I'm saying. When he would bite on what would be thrown, he would get another one after that. I mean, he was able to go with the flow very nicely. And then Williams just didn't follow through with like a combination that if you throw 1-2 and they don't land and you keep going forward, you have the potential to land the 3-4. But if you stop at the 1-2, then your opponent's like, okay, well, if you're not coming forward anymore, now is my time to come forward. And I think that happened a good couple of times in that fight.
I can't believe Vegas got this one wrong. Plus 145 for Janice is kind of nuts coming off of like what we saw, like his like streak being. So, it's crazy to me that he did get it done. He did look a little tired and got a little sloppy, but he was still trying to end the fight up until the end of the fight. So the fact Vegas got this one kind of way off is really interesting.
Yeah. There were a couple on here. I mean, this is what we're seeing. Now after Abu Dhabi, that also had a lot of heavy favorites. You're starting to see that sometimes these heavy favorites are not always what they're cracked up to be in these fights, and sometimes these underdogs really are some good barking dogs over here. So, a little bit surprising. I think that they probably thought that the experience of Williams might have been what trumped it, but at the same time, it wasn't that much more. I mean, he would have been 10-1 going into that fight, and Janice would have been 7-0. So I mean, that's not that far off. So yeah, it is a little interesting too, especially also when you look at the height and reach stats as well. Because I mean, when you saw him in the cage, I mean, Janice had a good amount of size on him. And you're right, he did start to slow down. And I would say that Williams had a bit of a better gas tank. But again, it's just like if you're not going to engage throughout those first two rounds, that third round, unless you can go in there and really dig deep for that knockout, you know how it is at heavyweight. Those tanks deplete so quickly.
Yeah, and looking at the stats, I don't remember this being on the ground for 2.5 minutes, but Carl Williams probably could have done that more, and it would have been boring, but he probably would have at least won the fight, I guess. So
yeah, it's a good point too, actually, because the most of the memory that I have of this fight was the standing as well, because it was a lot of Williams just biting on anything that was coming his way. I think that might be a note for him in general as well, is to be a little bit more calculated with what you're deciding to throw on, and again, lead the way, because if you're just trying to be a straight counter striker, especially at heavyweight, I mean, like, that seems just to me to be a crazy game plan in general, because you're just leaving yourself open. So I mean, like, if you don't get the counter, that, I mean, like, there's so much real estate for your opponent to take advantage of. It's like, bro, I mean, it's amazing that you didn't get knocked out because of that. I guess he got a good chin, but still, he might want to just work on some of those fundamental elements, which we say a lot about the heavyweights. It's a lot of these heavyweight guys have like a certain set couple of things that they do really well in their minds, at least, and that is just what they stick with. The only guys who really can pull away at heavyweight are the guys that become more well-rounded. Shout out to Tai Tuivasa.
For sure.
So right. Yeah. So I guess that's pretty much that. But nice win for Jonathan.
Yeah, it was good. It was fine. Like, I mean, it was the only reason it was exciting now that I look back to it also is because I was expecting at any point he can finish it, and he got close, but.
Well, and and one last note on that is that around that 7-0 range is when those types of fights start to happen. You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, he was a world ender coming into this first round, second round, knockout. You start getting up in the competition. That's where it starts to break away from you a little bit. And the guys that can really set themselves apart are the ones that have the well-rounded skill set to also get the finish in different ways, because if all you've done is knock people out and you start getting up against guys who have better chins, who are more experienced, yada yada, you got to have something that sets you apart,
Yeah, and I said this about Danny Barlow in the predictions video. Like, he can't finish every fight. Like, there's got to be some that go to decision. So, Jonathan, make sure this is the only one because you better come back and start finishing.
Yeah, well, I mean, heavyweight could certainly use it, you know?
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the GOAT, Carol Hossa versus Penny Kianzad. Carol Hossa, man, this was yet another fantastic performance after the very fantastic performance she had in her losing effort against Irene Aldana. Carol Hossa is super high in my book right now. I am all kinds of hot on her right now, man. I mean, after a performance like that, where she was, you want to talk about leading the dance. I mean, she was in the driver's seat from the opening fucking of the fight right up until the final horn. I mean, no, just really really great work.
I can tell you for fact that I was really interested in this fight. This was a good one. And then at the end, I said, wait a minute. The names are flipped. I thought the Brazilian was in the yellow, getting her ass whooped by the Swedish girl because they I don't know what was going on here. They had a nationality swap and fucking uniform swap. Like it was crazy to me. So
Well,
yeah,
Sweden's got the yellow in the cross there.
it was crazy, but this one was a really fun one. I knew the girl in the black won for sure. She was whooping her ass. I just didn't know it was Rosa until the end. So
Well, I mean, if you don't know now, you know, as Dana White might say, because that was, I mean, this performance from Hossa was, I mean, it was just spectacular. I mean, she was picking her apart. I mean, I give Kansat a lot of credit because she is tough. She was really trying to stay in there and stick with it. But I mean, when you're covered in blood and it's all your opponent's blood. That speaks volumes, man, and that's really what had happened there. I mean, she got opened up a couple times. I mean, the cuts were pretty much cosmetic. I think there might have been one that was a little bit deeper, but it was just enough damage that just over the course of the fight, she was just really putting it on her. And I mean, again, she's coming off of a loss to Irene Aldana. However, if you remember that fight, in my opinion, should probably be a Hall of Fame fight. I think that fight is Hall of Fame worthy. I know that didn't really get like the fanfare from the greater community, but like for all of these people who talk about the value or lack thereof of women's MMA, that fight right there should be the one that you should always go back to say, look at this. I mean, look at what they did here, because that to me that was like a female Lawler versus McDonald. I mean, like it was up there in that caliber. It was a crazy strikers affair. Now, I mean, you could say that they were both playing Rock'em Sock'em Robots and not defending at all. That's probably valid. However, I mean, from a fan's perspective, that's fan friendly shit. That was BMF shit right there. You talk about a women's BMF. I'd say that one of them probably deserves to be in that fight. Anyway, all of that aside, I say all of that to say she's coming off of that loss. Yeah, it is a loss, but it is that loss.
yeah,
And then with a performance like this, I was like, man, her stock cannot continue to rise more to me. I mean, she just needs to keep getting the wins if she's going to be in those firefights. But with the amount of offense she puts out, man, I'm 100% behind Carol Hossa right now.
I want to give a shout out to Panny. To get 30-27 is bad, but to make it actually close in the striking, you did well enough. Like you did what you were supposed to do. Like you just can't do it impressively enough. Like you can't defend enough. But you return fire. So
no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and this is another one where the story of the fight is Carol Hossa, but the other side of it is the toughness of Penny Kianzad. I mean, she's coming on. She's on a little bit of a skid now just because of the avenged loss to Macy Chiasson. And, now this loss as well. So, I mean, it does kind of suck because it's another one of those situations. It reminds me a little bit of Sam Hughes, where it's like, I don't think that the record necessarily reflects the quality of the fighter if you look at their actual fights and what goes into them. But at the end of the day, you got to get that win. It's a tough sport that way,
No, 100%. Yeah.
So yeah, really, really tough chick, and yeah, shout out to her for being able to withstand the intense amount of pressure, because I mean that really was from the beginning of the fight all the way to the end. That 30-27 is entirely legit,
Yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. That's what's crazy about it is like, how bad you know how good your opponent is if it's a 30-27, but it's like kind of close in the numbers. Like it's just something you can't even do at that point. Like
Right.
they're just swaying the judges with what they're doing, and you
Yeah.
can't.
So, and really just to cap that off, we were talking about what is next for Carol Hosa. The unfortunate thing is that she is in the same weight class as one Kayla Harrison, who is in a title eliminator fight coming up very soon with Ketlin Vieira, I believe,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
So, I mean, that's going to be, we'll see what happens there. But I think that most people kind of think that that's a little bit of a foregone conclusion. It's going to be pretty tough for anybody in that division to work their way up if Kayla's at top, man. I mean, she is her.
yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I
So
don't know why they don't even have her going for the belt as it is. If
yeah,
Rocky's
yeah.
not going to be defending or doing anything, just give her an interim and just merge them later when she's ready. I don't know. If you're going to do
Well,
that for Tom, give it to Kayla. Like fuck it.
yeah. I mean, I think that they want Rocky versus Juliana. I think that's what they're leading up towards. That's the fight that I think they want to do. And I look, I don't think anybody's like super hot on that fight, but at the same time, you really can't
It has to
deny
happen.
it has to happen. I mean, because Juliana, I mean, like her, hate her, or whatever you think about her, she beat Amanda Nunes. That's you get a golden ticket at that point.
That's the unfortunate backside to having a legitimate part of the business. Is like you do have to have the fights that you don't want but have to happen due to what the circumstances are. So
Shout out to the champion Bilal Muhammad.
yeah,
Anyway.
literally. Exactly. Remember that shit.
Remember the name indeed. All right. So, yeah, so we'll see what happens in that division. But, I mean, keep an eye on Carol Hosa. And honestly, in the women's right now, I would say that that's the division to watch. I mean, if you've got Kayla Harrison up there, towards the top, possibly going to be at the top, you got Juliana Pena still in the picture. I mean, like I said, love her or hate her, she's still dangerous. And you got a bunch of other killers going out doing their thing right now, Carol Hosa being one of them. It'll be interesting to see what happens in that division going forward.
Yeah, Kayla is dead ass like Shao Kahn of fucking
I
that
mean,
division. Like holy
the
shit.
the hardest fight she has is her weight cut.
Dude, literally, like she's next level. I don't know, man.
That's I'd been watching her in PFL and I didn't know if she was ever going to come over the UFC, but when she finally did, I was like, oh, people are going to start really realizing what they've been having over in PFL for all these years.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird. I think the UFC is gonna do good with the appeal of her because Dana has this like, look at this Goliath of a person mindset. Like he's gonna just show off that Kayla is the biggest, baddest, eighth wonder of the world, whatever you want to say. Like,
Yeah, it's true, and that's why. Just to touch on Robellis one more time, that's why he was. I guarantee you that he was throwing shit in the back when Robellis was on his back that entire
yeah,
fight when he got
yep,
fraud checked.
yeah,
Because yeah, you're absolutely right. The physique and the monstrous nature of these guys and gals is exactly what they are looking for. He's got that Vince McMahon mindset in that regard.
exactly.
Thankfully, hopefully only in that regard. But,
Business, business.
yeah. I digress. But anyway, yeah, we'll see what happens going forward there. But yeah, I mean, Kayla is the force to be reckoned with, and there's a lot going on in that division. It's a hot one right now.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, moving on. We've got Kazama versus Gregorio. This was a fight that was another one with a not super heavy favorite, but a sizable favorite in Gregorio. And this guy just continues to get checked and checked and checked. Shout out to the homie Badger who was throwing the book at this guy in the Discord, saying what a bum he is and this and all this kind of stuff, whatever. I don't know
Was
if I
he?
necessarily.
Oh,
Badger was reading this guy the riot act a little while ago, man. Yeah. This he said that he's been making him a ton of money because he's been calling each one of his losses correctly, and now he's got a couple of them. I mean, we talked about Tallulah a little bit earlier with the 10-10. This guy's 8-5. I mean, he's inching.
yeah, no, I feel bad because at the start of the fight, I said, you know what, I do know this guy. I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt, and I think he would win. I didn't bet with anything this weekend, thankfully, because this is where this guy would have fucked me up. Like, golly, brother, you fucking and he tapped early. I don't even think the choke it wasn't even under the chin. I don't even think it had been there or whatever we want to say. I know I don't want to get choked. I would tap too, but like, if you want to be great, you want to be a professional fighter, you got to learn to not tap to shit like that, or don't let him get on your fucking back. Because
Well,
honestly, I thought you had this in the bag, bro.
I mean, well, and that's, what I would touch on there is just the fact that, I mean, whether it was an early tap or not, I think that really everything that Kazama was doing was, it was a cumulative effect. I mean, this guy came out from the start of the fight. I mean, he was like a thunderbolt coming out of there, man. I mean, like the intensity that this guy had from, the opening of the fight, like all the way through. It was the most interesting one to me for that was that not only was he that intense going into it, there was one time where there was like a cup check or something along those lines. They broke the action for a little bit. As soon as they resumed the action, he was boom, right back in there, right all over him again. I mean, this guy is ferocious in his intensity. I would say that with a different fighter, he's got to be a little bit careful with that level of intensity because, you get a little bit wild, you get a little bit careless when you're going that crazy. However, in this case, it certainly worked for him, and I mean, just all over him, man. I mean, these numbers are probably somewhat accurate, but really the number that sticks out is the control time, and it wasn't even necessarily all on the ground. I mean, it was just a lot of pressure, up against the cage and stuff like that. I think that they factor that into that control number as well. So, this guy was all, yeah, he was a dog from the start.
I want to say that they talk about, Dagestani wrestling, shit like that. Japanese submissions, they're on the climb. You better watch it because they know what they're doing. It's the whole grappling sequence. They know how to just get to the position they need, and it's unique enough aren't catching on yet because here we go, a sub right on the fucking chin, and it hurt. So
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, we know what Mr. Tatsuro Taira is doing up there in the higher levels of the division. So, yeah, I mean, this was a really nice win for Kazama. Again, a plus 200 underdog on this one. Definitely proven the odds makers wrong again. Yeah, I mean, it's we say with these kinds of fights, you got to see what he will do against somebody who is not Gregorio. I mean, we got to see him against somebody who's not going to let some of these things happen. Somebody who, we had said this a while back as well, where like about Mikhail Oleszejczyk versus Michel Pereira. I mean, that's always one that you can go back to where somebody gets overwhelmed early in a fight and that just goes completely off the rails for him. This wasn't necessarily that, but it does highlight the same point where like you have to be prepared for whatever is coming at you at the beginning of the fight. Not everybody's going to come out there, touch gloves and pussyfoot around for a little while. You know what I mean? Like there are guys like this Kazama dude who is going to come out and just be ferocious from the start, and you have to be prepared to handle that. And I think that Gregorio definitely let it get away from him early in the fight.
I want to say, Gregorio, these are the type of fights that you're supposed to make people like me and Badger look like idiots.
Right.
Like you're supposed to make us look like the dumb people who just watch the TV screen. You're not supposed to let us be able to point out every flaw in your game, every reason you're going to lose, how you're going to lose, and then you go out here and do everything to a T. Like that is not good, brother. Like I don't know. Like Spivac, good example. I did not think. We'll get to it, but great example in Spivac. Learn a little about that, how to prove people wrong. Handle adversity and overcome it. That's what.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that record is starting to become an even scale, and that is not what you want. I mean, I would think that he's probably getting close to being in the conversation for a cut as well. So, really, you're on the chopping block. If they give you one more fight, man, you really need to turn the ship around because it's only going to get worse for you going up the division if you stay around.
I don't know what the correlation or connection that I want to make, but minus 245, you're letting Vegas down. You're making Dana look stupid now. He's the one giving you the tips, Like I don't know. But either way, you were the favorite and you got subbed really fucking fast. So
yeah, and really. Shout out to Kazama coming out there with a great strategy and game plan and the control that really sold everything, man. I mean, he was in the driver's seat so 100%. I mean, talk about leading the dance. This guy was in control for the entire fight. It was really nice to see. I keep going back to it, but it bears repeating that we got to see what he can do against somebody who's not going to let it all happen. But, I mean, with a style like that, that could produce some really entertaining fights if you got a guy who's going to be a little bit more hip to that, coming out a little bit more aware. I mean, that could be a really nice fight, going forward, a really fan-friendly fight between two guys just really going at it like that. And that, for the people that are, that get pissed off whenever it goes to the ground, a fight like that could be really entertaining on the ground with two guys that are both in the same relative skill set with the same level of intensity. That could be a really nice back and forth with some good scrambles and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, we'll see what happens there. Kazama gets the win. All right, so why don't you go ahead and start off with Yana Santos versus Chelsea Chandler? Because I can feel the anger starting to well up in me already. So you take it.
So we first want to point out Chelsea Chandler missed weight again
by 5 fucking pounds,
and it showed. She probably missed it by 12, and they were being gracious. It was ridiculous. She didn't look good. I don't think she ever has. I got into the end of this fight. It was the third round, and I'm sitting here questioning myself, like, what is Chelsea Chandler's, like, what is her skill set good at? Like, I've never seen her do good. I've seen her in a lot of different positions. I've seen her do a lot of different stuff. I have never once said, like, man, she's got like good striking. Like, okay, she can punch, or like, okay, she can grapple, or she just like can't do anything really that looks like, one, like technically sound, or two, like effective. Like, she just does shit, and she's just out there looking like a slob. I'm like, not even about that. Like, you missed by 5 pounds. Like, you come on, you didn't even try. She's out there looking bad. She's out there not performing good. And then, the fight was so bad on her end that we're sitting here questioning. We were sitting here going, how the fuck did Santos get from Russia? We were so lost. We were sitting here thinking for the whole fight. We were debating how a Brazilian last name or something got all the way to Russia, and then we get to the end of the fight, and we're like, oh, Thiago Santos. Oh, that's her fucking husband. Yeah, so we felt stupid, but there was nothing else going on in this fight, bro. Those cymbals were just clanking around, like, bro, it was bad.
So, yeah, all right. So, I mean, 100% what you said is absolutely accurate. But, take it back just a step here, right? So, missed his weight by 5 pounds. Now, Chase, we talk about these things in the Discord often. When a fighter misses weight, especially by such a large margin, that's generally the indication that they got it in the bag. They don't have to worry about the weight cut as much. The rehydration's not going to be there the same way. As long as there's a passable skill set coming in against a fighter who had to go through all of that stuff, that is a huge advantage. That is why Wonder Boy was correct to not be taking those fights when his opponents are missing weight. Put all that to the side, right? Chandler comes out here looking like 10 tons of shit in a 5-ton bag. You know what I mean? It was just such a slop fest. I mean, all of that extra weight was just apparent. It wasn't muscle weight. You know that. She was looking so slouchy. And the skill set, I mean, against Yana Kunitskaya, who has the candy cane record of the century. I mean, like, if you go back in her record, it is so red light, green light. I mean, like, this is the type of fight that if you're going to be somebody, if you're going to make some kind of push for yourself as a person who people should remember, other than for one of the most memeable moments in all of MMA with her sprinting across the cage, if you're going to make a name for yourself, this is the type of fight where you should be able to do it. Instead, after missing weight by 5 pounds, you come in looking like such a slob and get completely starched by some really nice and effective kicking from Santos. That's the other side of the equation here, is that this was the Yana Kunitskaya of old, the one that had her getting the hype that she had coming into the organization. She looked in vintage form, I would say. But all of that aside, I mean, it's really easy to look in vintage form when you're fighting a sack of potatoes.
Yeah, no, it was really bad. And it's unfortunate that, like, you go in with a lot of information to preface the fights. Yana Santos candy cane record. You would have, bro, if you would have talked to me after that fight, I would have thought this is like an upcoming prospect cooking this girl. Like, she did exactly what she was supposed to do. But now that I know that she's just not that, good performance by her. But I mean, what else can you expect if we all know that she's not what she once was, kind of deal?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, this could be another situation
Resurgence.
where resurgence could be in the cards. I mean, it's not out of the question. I mean, I'm not going to start rumors or make any kind of specific allegations, but I did want to mention that Tiago did pop in PFL recently, so just want to put that out there. You know, it's not guilt by association. Just putting it out there that is a fact. Anyway, regardless, let's say that that's not that's out of the equation altogether. It could be a resurgence, and also, I mean, really, when you have such a blank canvas, we talk about the blank canvas. This was about as blank a canvas as you could fucking get. I mean, I really thought, putting my money down on Chandler after the losses, that like she was going to be out here like really trying to prove that, no, those losses are bullshit. I'm somebody that people need to keep an eye on and remember. Well, you're getting remembered for all the wrong reasons now. I could not be more upset with this performance.
I want to say that she should be cut, because like one, she's not. Two, she's like not somebody that's like, oh, we need to have her around. Like she's top priority of the company. Oh, and another thing is like she's clearly just having trouble making the cut. Like I know it's hard to say that you just can't make the weight of the division you want to, but like you gotta be real with yourself sometimes. Like if you can't get there and you think you can every time, it's like you keep making these promises like I'm gonna be on weight and I'm gonna, fulfill the contract or whatever. And if you just don't do that every time, like why are you here? Like it's
Yeah, I was surprised that they even let this fight go on. I would have thought that they would have made this catch weight. I mean, with such a high miss. I mean, 5 pounds is ridiculous. I mean, that's pretty much almost the next weight class. I mean, you're getting in that territory. So it is kind of surprising that it's even went through. But yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, she really does have to take a long hard look in the mirror and be real with herself, because I mean, missing weight by 5 pounds and getting completely solidly outclassed. The fact that two judges gave her a round is insane to me. I mean, there was not a single thing that she did in any round that I think that would have swayed it. But yeah, I mean, to the other side of the coin here, Santos's kicks were really, really crisp. She had really her kicks are nice. She was mixing up the kicks as well. I mean, that was one note that I had, is that not only was she kicking effectively, but she was, utilizing every kick in the book. I mean, she, at one point, I think at the end of one of those rounds, she went for an axe kick. I don't think she ended up getting it, but still, the fact that she threw it, it's like, you're doing a whole lot. So looks impressive. Yeah, I mean, this could be a resurgence, but I would be very cautious putting any kind of heavy backing behind Santos going forward, only because Chandler was just such a can.
I want to like I'm not even trying to make implications and I'm not trying to put this on anybody, but like, Chelsea, you showed up to the weigh-in, or like the pre weigh-in show, whatever it was, and you looked really bad. Okay? You get into the fight, you looked really bad. Like I just mentally, what's going on? Are you happy? Like are you in a good headspace going forward? Like I mean, I need to know this because clearly something was up. And maybe this is an every fight thing for you, but you got to figure some shit out. Like this can't be your career. Like, come on, like what the fuck?
No, you're exactly right, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there are extenuating circumstances in people's lives sometimes. I mean, we don't know all of the personal details about all these fighters' lives. All we can really go on is what we see in the pre-fight lead up and inside of the cage. Based on that, I mean, you are in such a deep hole. I couldn't imagine her sticking around for much longer. In fact, I was more thinking that the next roster watch post that we saw was probably going to be her. So she's sticking around, I guess, for a little while longer. We'll have to wait and see if she gets another fight. But I mean, she is only 6-3, so I guess you can say that it hasn't like completely caught up to her yet. But I mean, if you give her one more fight, I mean, she's really got to do something to to course correct, because I mean, there's just nothing there from these last two.
I want to say I find it interesting that so back to Lulin and Chelsea Chandler. If she was gonna be cut, she would have been cut right after the fight. The roster tracker is normally right on it, unless there's like some negotiation kind of going on. Like, so I feel like Tallulah maybe just called it the quits after that. Because if he was like cut by the UFC and they didn't want him, like he was gone after that fight type deal. But
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's different circumstances for different fighters, of course, but regardless, I mean, really, it's more just the point that I thought that she would be the next on the chopping block, and
yeah,
I'm pretty sure that she is.
yeah.
I mean, she's got to be.
I mean, so it'll be interesting if we haven't seen it yet. In my opinion, I don't think it's coming unless they're like gonna do some talking with her. But I don't see why you would even entertain that. Is my point. Like
Yeah.
she ain't fucking. She don't give a shit. Like even if she did, it's like she's not proving that she does. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's something that needs to really be adjusted in her camp for sure. Get a sports psychologist, perhaps. Get your coaching right. I mean, she's training out there with the Diaz brothers. I guess that is some. That speaks for something. I guess positive. I would
that's
think.
why she shows up like shit to the fights. Okay, Jesus.
Well, I don't know. Whatever it is, whatever you need to change, you need to make some immediate and impactful adjustments to everything across the board because it is not looking good for you right now, Miss Chandler. There's a lot of negative and not a whole lot of positive right now.
100%.
Yeah. All right. So that's that one. All right. So moving on to Chris Gutierrez versus Kwang Lee. Gutierrez with the kicks. That's really all you got to say. I mean, take it away.
He's so fucking annoying, dude. Like it's like, bro, because like I hate that I sit here and I be like, I look at Chris Gutierrez and the skill set that he has and the way he utilizes. I'm like on the feet, he's like Leon Edwards, and it's like to a T at this point. Like he just does fucking nothing. Like I'm just so annoyed with the fact that he actually got away with a unanimous decision. I was hoping they would put a little heat on him because after the first round. After the second round, I was thinking like, okay, somebody had to have scored it 2-0 to Quang, in my opinion. It was
Mm-hmm.
close enough that Quang Lee was putting on a decent. I know the striking wasn't there, but he was muscling and he was getting shit done. And then the third round came and Chris did turn it up. He did make it a clear, decisive third round. That first and second, though, I was really assuming it was going to be a split decision.
I mean, does he ever throw his hands? Ever?
No,
I mean, it was crazy to me. I did the watch along here, by myself, no Vitz King, so I was able to hear the commentary pretty clearly. And I have to agree 10,000% with Paul Felder. Felder was getting really upset with him, saying, "Yo, this guy. I mean, like he needs to like." Your leg kicks are great, and that's all well and good, but bro, I mean, like mix it up even in the slightest. I mean, for them to say that he landed, 23 to the head. I mean, is like were they like just kicks plus? I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
it's like he's got a pair of hands. I mean, like he might as well just not. Like this dude could have two limbs total and be the exact same fighter.
We got to make the point. Okay. So this dude has been in the UFC since 2019. Okay. That's not necessarily that long, 5 years, and active, whatever you want to say. But he has the second most leg kicks in the entire UFC history, which whoever's first, probably Izzy. But you got to imagine how many kicks this dude is throwing to be on par with people who have like 8-year careers or whatever. Like,
Oh, actually, I think I know who has the most kicks. I believe that they said it was
Jose Aldo.
was it Jose Aldo? Well,
I
maybe in the
don't know.
men's. I think that they said that it was Joanna Jędrzejczyk.
Well, the career that she had, and then Chris Gutierrez, the fact that he's number two, like in leg kicks lane, it's like, dude, are you only throwing leg kicks? Like, holy shit. It's crazy to me because he doesn't do anything. He's just not aggressive. And this is again, I tell you, it's the Chris Gutierrez that shows up is the one that's that matters. And this wasn't even a show up, predicament. He just fucking sucks. I don't know.
I mean, well, look, okay, so obviously he won the fight. Real quick, just no chill. If you stick around to the chat, I will definitely come back to that because I want to know what you're talking about there. But back to this. He won the fight. The kicks were effective. All of that is what it is. There's got to be somebody who is going to not be playing that game. I mean, like, there's got to be somebody who's going to check them more effectively. That just also seems to be a bit of a thing is that he keeps getting put up against guys who are not checking effectively. Because I mean, this dude, he might have checked a couple, but like I'm pretty sure he got the lead leg eaten up pretty badly, pretty early.
Yeah.
So it's like there's got to be somebody. This is such an easily figured out puzzle. that, I mean, how does this stand? You know, you know what I mean? Like, there's got to be people that are going to go in there and not let this happen.
Well, there's a reason that Chris Gutierrez's career is not very good. Like he's just on and off, on and off. And he lost to Pedro Munoz and Song Yudong. I mean, okay, those are the only two recent losses, but still, there's a reason that cusp of competition is what's putting him out. Like, is because he has no game outside of leg kicks. He's not doing anything with the leg kicks to set up more. He doesn't punch. He doesn't wrestle. He doesn't grapple. Like, it's honestly so crazy that this dude is even like on my TV screen, and I was supposed to root for him.
Yeah, I would give him the same criticism or advice, I guess you could say, that I gave to Jailton Almeida back when I was still kind of rooting in his camp. Maybe you should give your striking coach a call. You know, why don't you and your striking coach get a little bit closer? Maybe learn how to throw the hands a little bit. Your boxing coach, get in there with him a little bit more. He's got to be missing you, bro. I mean, like it's been a long time since you talked to him. Give the guy a call.
Yeah.
It'd probably be
100%.
Yeah, probably be good for you. But hey, a win's a win, I guess. So at the end of the day, take that home. Another win's a win situation is your boy left hand to God Danny Barlow versus Veretennikov, this newcomer here. Yeah, so I mean, this was a win for Danny Barlow. This was not the most impressive win on the planet, in my opinion. What'd you think?
This is where I was winding down the card. Like Chris Gutierrez came and I was like, yeah, that fucking sucked. Then this one I was like, God, I just have 3 fights left. So this one I can't tell you much about. I can tell you that I don't remember much happening in the striking numbers. Like nobody even got over 60 strikes total landed. Like, and the wrestling, it doesn't even look like there was much. Like what was happening during this fight? Like I can tell you that I was praying for this to end, but
yeah, well, so that's really what it was. We were talking about the commentary. Go back to that for a second. Bisping was basically the entire fight saying that Veretennikov is going to watch that fight back and wish that he had engaged more. And that, I mean, to a T is exactly what it was. Barlow was landing a couple here and there, but it was all very much just coasting. I mean, really, I guess he thought that he had gotten up enough in the first round that by the second half of the second, he was really in autopilot mode, and he didn't have really much of a reason to be nervous because Veretennikov was not coming back and giving it to him in any legitimate way. I think that he started to get the message, Veretennikov, towards the end, like in that third round, he started to pick it up a little bit, but by then it had already gotten away from him. But yeah, I mean, Barlow, for the at the time 8-0 record coming in, this was supposed to be like, okay, really show that you're pulling away from the pack here. I mean, this fight did not give me any kind of confidence going forward that like, if he has a guy who's going to be more aggressive, I mean, I guess that maybe he's trying to just be a counter striker, and that's all well and good, but we saw what happened with Carl Williams earlier on the card. I think that that's an apt comparison. If you think that you're just going to be able to counter strike your way towards victory every single time, you're going to get caught, and caught quick.
Yeah, Danny Barlow was supposed to show out again, give me a reason to be like, yes, this is why I was talking so much about him. I knew he was coming in, he was going to be a killer. But when you get on these cards and you don't make an impression, it's like, well, what would have happened if we would have just thrown you on the prelims of a pay-per-view? You would have even stunk it up more. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, hey, man, not for nothing. He's rocking the skullet that Charles Johnson rocks. Buddy, you are not worthy of the skullet. That is CJ's and CJ's alone until you prove otherwise, my dude.
Yep. He definitely has to get a couple knockouts, and he has to beat an upcoming prospect other than, himself. So we'll see.
Yeah. And as far as Veretennikov goes, I mean, not really enough to say whether or not he has potential going forward. I mean, the bright lights might have scared him a little bit, even though it was the Apex, but regardless, you got to do better than that. That's really all it comes down to. You got to put out more a little bit than that, buddy. I mean, like, this could have been a contender series fight, for him. He might have been on the contender series. I don't remember if they said that or not, but either way, I mean, you're on the main stage.
Oh, yes, he was a while ago in 2021.
Okay. So there you go. I mean, so whether or not he showed out there or not, whatever the case may be, that's all in the past now, buddy. This is the main stage. This is the real deal over here. You can't be showing up and kind of tapping your way around. This tap dance ain't gonna cut it in the UFC.
Yeah, and see, it's another dude, it's another person who I question when watching. It's like, where is your skill set? Like, where are you elite in the game? Like, why aren't you doing that? Why am I not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel of like where's a victory can be placed with you? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same about Barlow to an extent too. Really, I mean, after that performance, at least, I mean, his previous performances might have spoken otherwise, but left hand to God needs to raise that hand a little bit higher in the sky, I would say.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. I know that this, I mean, so all of what we were saying about some of these fights not being the greatest, I would say that this was a pretty entertaining fight. No, this is Damon Jackson versus Chepe Mariscal.
This one was a good fight if you were rooting for Chepe Mariscal, who missed weight.
He did miss weight. That is a good point. Missed weight by 3 pounds. That's another pretty significant weight loss. Actually, I think Barlow missed by like 2.5 pounds or something. Actually,
0.25.
0.25. Yeah, my mistake. Yeah. Sorry, I misspoke there. But yeah. I mean, that's kind of. I felt bad for him in that one. Man, 0.25 pounds. That's such a tiny amount to have to miss by. But anyway, that's in the past. But yeah, you're right. Chepe did miss weight by 3 pounds. You're right.
And I wanted to make a point also is with the Danny Barlow thing, but I missed. He also got deducted his purse. Why didn't he choose to go cut that 0.25, or why wouldn't they let him? That was kind of weird.
Well, yeah, I think that he probably had been cutting engine and then just time ran out kind of thing. They only have a certain amount of time to cut that extra weight.
So anyway, Chepe, really great performance. goddamn, I've never seen a 30-25. Like, it was actually so impressive to see. Like, and I'm watching it, and as the fight goes on, I'm like waiting for Damon Jackson to do a sliver of something. And as the rounds go on, I couldn't even envision it being a 30-25. Like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, 30-27, easy, or 30-26, or whatever the fuck it is. But 30-25 is fucking nuts, man.
Yeah, that is pretty bad. That is exceedingly rare that you would ever see something like that. Yeah, I mean, I would say somewhat warranted there. Yeah, and just to touch on No Chill saying a doctor wouldn't let him. Yeah, that also happens. Sometimes the doctors will stop the weight cuts. So good point. Yeah, and that's a very like doctor to doctor kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, shout out to that doctor in back in Saudi Arabia that stopped the Johnny Walker fight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a individual by individual kind of case thing. But anyway, back to this fight. Yeah, I mean, 30-25 is pretty crazy. But I mean, the issue that I saw was that Jackson was just content to grapple, and clinch pressure for so much of the fight, but he wasn't doing anything with it. And on the other side of the equation, Chepe was doing a lot with it. That was really what set it all apart, because both of them seemed to be pretty comfortable with the grappling and the clinch situations. Like, I mean, that was kind of annoying for a good amount of this fight too. I'm like, bro, like I mean, I see that you're throwing knees inside. I see that you're getting some shots inside. In these clinch situations, they were clinching out in open water as well. They weren't always up against the cage. So I mean, there were some times that it was decent back and forth in those positions. But it's like, bro, just disengage and fucking throw something at range. I mean, the guy's got to be tired after all of these exchanges. But regardless, if you are in those situations and you are the less active fighter, but there was that one round where he was getting the shots to the side of the head. I mean, bro, like
that was going to be my point, is that this fight was almost ended. Probably should have been, because Damon Jackson just loves to get beat on the face. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, he's a tough guy, but man, I mean, it sadly, and I do try to use this sparingly, but this is another situation that I do kind of have to say it was a little bit of a low fight IQ kind of thing. It's like, bro, if you know that these clinches are not working after doing it for 2 whole rounds, or however long it had been up until that point that you're getting pummeled on the side of the head, I mean, to continue to go back to it, you're going back to the same well. Call that the Ryan Hall. Saw what happened to him. I mean, with him versus Ilya. So I mean, like, this is. These types of things, man, it's tough to see, because I do like Jackson, but at the same time, and the weight miss does play a factor into all of that. So you can't completely throw that out the window as a factor, because it certainly is. But really, the fight IQ was really what was showing through to me, and it was just unfortunate because this didn't have to be as one-sided for Chepe.
Yeah, and Damon Jackson, shout out to you for always taking a fight and always being ready to step up. You did step up to the co-main spot on this one,
It's true.
but it was really in honorable fashion. It was really to set up Shepe. That was nice of you, even though 30-25, brother, is so fucking crazy.
Yeah, you really never want to see that. The only other time I can remember that in recent memory was Neil Magny versus Ian Gary, I believe. I think he got a 30-25
Oh,
on one of those.
really?
I think so. I think
That would make sense though.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
I can see
absolutely.
that.
Yeah. But yeah, that not great. And yeah, I mean, on the other side, weight miss aside, sad to say, the asterisk will be there for for all of this. But that being said, Chepe is on a decent little win streak, so I don't know how that all plays out going forward. But a win's a win's a win at the end of the day, as we say. So see what they do with him.
Yeah, I'm excited. Shepe, he's cool, man. I know I was rooting against you, but like, bro, I knew what you were capable of. And Damon Jackson was just supposed to be a punching bag, and you did exactly what you needed to do.
Yeah, I would like to see him up against a guy. I don't know if it like makes sense for this specific person, but a guy like Steve Garcia. That would be somebody that I think I would like to see that type of fight, because that would be a fight where that clinch bullshit is not going to cut it,
Hmm.
and both those guys will probably go out and slug it out, like something like that, or a fighter of that same type of style. I would like to see him against that. I think that would be cool.
Hmm.
But Soriano versus Beza was 30-25. Good call.
Hmm.
All right, so
Uh-huh.
moving on to the main event here. It was a quick one. This is Marcin Tybura versus Sergey Spivac. I mean, what do you say about the polar bear, man?
This is what I get. It's one thing that I say, I've been talking shit about these two all year. I talk shit about Sergey Spivak the most, and it would be in typical fashion that he comes out here and gets a submission that no heavyweight has like ever done, barely. Like, it's crazy to me that an armbar was set up by this dude and it was successful and it worked. I know it's time, a move as old as time, whatever you want to say, but like, bro, these dudes don't be throwing their legs up like that. How did he get so flexible all of a sudden? Like, it's crazy to me. I don't know. This dude got beat up with a gun, and you're telling me he didn't once think that I can grapple with him after I can flip Marcin Tybura over with an armbar, but Cyril Gahn I'll just stand in front of him and just get beat up. All right. It's
It,
crazy.
if what No Chill is saying in the chat is true, that is fucking nuts. If the last heavyweight armbar was Fabricio Verdum, that's insanity. Verdum has
Yeah.
been out of the organization for quite a while. But
Yeah.
yeah. So okay, so with this fight, the one thing I did want to say before the armbar sequence started was that this is speculation a little bit on my part, but I don't think I'm too far off. I think that the shot that Spivak landed early in the round, I think it was like the first punch that he threw, or among the first. I think either the first, second kind of thing. He landed a pretty solid one on Tybura that looked like it hurt him. I mean, it didn't necessarily drop him. It didn't necessarily like have him super wobbled, but to me, just optically, it seemed like it affected him. So when Tybura, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Tybura was the one that initiated the ground in the first place. So I think that he might have been a little bit out of sorts by the time that they had gotten to the ground. And so when they were there, he started off in dominant position, but might not have been 100% with it. I mean, I'm like not out of it, but that kind of like hazy sort of daisy sort of thing. And then shout out to the homie Andy, who was in the watch along with me, who made a very good point. This was a really nice, kind of high level move on Spivak's part to use the body weight of Tybura against him. He had Tybura's body going in a direction that the weight carried it over so that the armbar got set up almost naturally. So, I
Yeah.
mean, whether or not that was intended or that just was a happy accident, I guess is debatable. But either which way, I mean, again, optically speaking, it was kind of high level shit. I'm not going to lie.
I hate when this happens. So I'm going to explain the situation. I'm sitting here and I'm like, there's no way Spivak's setting up an armbar. And in my head, if I'm Tybura, I would know, okay, my hands are on like this dude. I know that he's setting up a move that I've practiced or whatever because I'm a fucking grappler. How am I calling it out, saying there's just no way this dude's going to get an armbar? Why is he setting it up? And then the fact that it comes to fruition that he does successfully do it as a fucking player or a fighter that would never be able to do that in any other scenario unless it's this fucking guy. Like, I don't know. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I saw the clip from your watch along where you where you were calling it out, and yeah, that was a pretty one of those sequences where you're seeing it happen in real time and you're calling it out, and it's like watching a car accident happen. You
Yeah,
know, it's like, oh,
like,
you're gonna hit that person. You know, like, yeah, no, well, I mean, look, it is what it is. I mean, as far as that's why I believe that he might have been somewhat compromised, because it was pretty well telegraphed. I mean, like it was one of those deals where it was like, from seeing it from the angle that we all at home were at, it was like, bro, like, move, like, do
yeah.
something. This is coming from a mile away. It was pretty well telegraphed. But I gotta believe that there was a little bit of a compromise going on there for him, because otherwise, how can you really justify it? You know,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
It,
that's is
there's
what it
really
is.
not much more to say. I mean, it didn't happen the way that I thought it was going to happen, but honestly, these are the shits that I'm talking about. Spivak, you earned my respect. That's what you needed to come out here and do, and I'm never going to think you're going to do this again. But now that I see, you got a little dog in you.
Well, that was going to be the question I was going to have, is what does this do for Spivak in general? Because as we've said time and again, heavyweight is such a fucking mess. You've got these guys in circular motion. I mean, heavyweight is an Ouroboros at the moment. It's a serpent eating its own tail. This is their second fight. What does this even really do as far as moving any kind of needles go? I don't know what it does. I don't know what, his next opponent, is going to be because of that. And to think that that could ever happen again is pretty far-fetched, I would think, unless this is the evolution of Spivak. This could be the next level, as No Chill in the chat is saying. He did look the best that he has looked in his career. I mean, that was probably the most dominant that he's been, aside from some of his errant knockouts here and there or whatever. I don't know what this does. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how that shakes things up. What's the new conversation looking like?
Who fucking knows? Like you said, they're just gonna keep fighting the same fights over and over again. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. Sirogan and Volkov, they're gonna fight Spivak, the winner of that one. Who knows?
You think so? You think
I don't
that's
fucking know.
yeah? I don't fucking know. Who the hell knows? Well,
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Yeah, Spivak is taking Tybura's place. Yeah,
yeah. Well, and I mean, and that's the other side of the equation here, is that Tybura has now been checked pretty goddamn hard. I mean, that was not only to lose, but to lose in such unfortunate is a nice way to put it. Amateurish, I guess, is the mean way to put it. You can pick, whatever gradient in the middle there you want to place it at, but it was not a great look for him.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%.
So, yeah, I mean, that, I guess, pretty much wraps that up. I don't know if there's really much more to say about it. The only other point I guess I will make is that I had said it at the beginning of the watch along. If that fight had gone to decision, I was going to ram my head through a plate glass window. So I'm glad that did not happen, because had that been a boring cuddle fest for 5 rounds, I think that I might have lost my mind. But thankfully, the noggin is intact. So, good for Spivak, at least making it interesting. And no chill, that will absolutely not happen. So let's not even put that into like the ether.
All right.
All right, yeah. So I mean, I guess that is UFC Fight Night Tybura versus Spivak 2. As we had said, not necessarily the greatest card on the planet, but a couple of decent performances here and there, and hopefully some that can move a couple people up the ladder a little bit more. Now with some wins, we talked about Youssef Zalal, Luciano as well. Coming in. Maybe this can speed her up on her track a little bit. Chepe getting a nice win. See what happens with him. Overall, not the worst that I've ever seen. Not the nowhere near the greatest either.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So yeah, you want to take a look at next week?
Yeah, we'll look at Perth real quick.
Oh, yes, indeed. We've got UFC 305 coming up. That is, well, actually, I mean, we got the Contender Series coming up before that, but we won't talk about that necessarily. Yeah, we got 305, Duplessis versus Adesanya, man. So one thing to mention about this going into it, before we even really get into any predictions or anything, why is there no hype around this fight? I mean, there was all this animosity. They had that in cage moment, the African brother, yada yada. You know, don't want to continue down that path, but I mean, they had set this up to be this big grudge match between the two of them. I have not heard a single person anywhere really talking too much about this in any kind of meaningful way. It doesn't seem like anybody really cares.
Yeah, honestly, the big statement about this week is just that it's in Australia. Like that it is the Australian card. Like honestly, I've always said that Izzy doesn't really have the appeal for me. So maybe people are just catching on like the dude's just not really that cool. Like he's not that interesting. It's kind of cringe. And then Drekus as well, like he's just like kind of a dude. He's funny when Sean Strickland is, poking the bear and he's poking back, but like I don't know. Until we get to the press moment, I mean, I guess there's nothing there for me. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and No Chill makes a good point as well that you're only as good as your last fight. I mean, I see that. I can understand that. And with Izzy, there are some extenuating circumstances to that. I mean, he has been in some very, very boring fights. At the same time, I think it's a little bit disrespectful to be counting out a champion as dominant as Izzy, even in the contender spot. And there's a whole conversation that's been going on about contender Izzy versus champion Izzy. All whatever you can debate all that bullshit. It's all theoretical until they're in the cage anyway. But the point of the matter is that I mean, to be basing Israel Adesanya off of that last fight like he wasn't the man for as long as he was. I mean, you got to remember too, not only was he the man, but he was fighting 2-3 times a year. I mean, this guy was one of the most active champions that we've ever had as well. Eventually it's going to catch up to you, but I don't think that that's necessarily any indication of what he would be bringing to this fight. I mean, that maybe that's just, maybe I'm misguided in my thinking about that, but that's where I stand on that. I mean, the guy has had some, I mean, he's had the streak of all streaks. I mean, he's one of the most dominant champions we've ever seen in this sport. Granted, he is going up against Drekus, who Drekus takes being a champion very seriously. So I got to believe that he is going to always come into every fight as prepared as he needs to be. I actually really think that Drekus is a good champion in that regard. Like he's not one that fucks around. He's not trying to play the bullshit games that Strickland plays. Oh, I don't care about the belt. Now I really care about the belt. So no, his goal was to be a champion. He is a champion. He wants to stay a champion. I got to believe that he's going to be coming into the fight with that mentality. So it's going to be a hard test for Izzy, but to think that he's going to come out here and not do anything just because that's what his last fight was, I think that's a little bit misguided.
I want to go off with No Chill just said. Israel, his title run, I'm not going to go ahead and, discredit it too much. But the fact is maybe people are starting to realize that this dude didn't even deserve this shot as is. Because why do you just get to retire, leave, lose, whatever you want to say, and then come back to a title shot? I get money, but I'm hoping people see that that's not necessarily what should have happened. Rob Whittaker probably could have, Rob Whittaker, Sean Strickland. We have people that were active, that were ready and in the game.
Well, I see, but I would push back on that a little bit though, because again, you're talking about a champion that was as dominant as he was. Now, again, you can say that that not every win was this amazing fireworks of a win, but you got to give a little bit. Look, if John fucking Jones gets the special treatment that he gets because of how dominant he is, I mean, I think that you can extend a little bit of an olive branch to Israel Adesanya in that regard. I do understand all of the circumstances with Sean Strickland and, that the fight was very close. A lot of people think he won that fight, et cetera, et cetera. I get all of that, but I don't think that it's necessarily the wrong thing. I understand. I don't think that it's wrong. But in this fight, I mean, get this fight over with, and then the whole conversation changes. If Izzy wins this fight, then, I mean, that just throws everything into a tailspin. If he loses this fight, which a lot of people think that he will, then, it goes right back to exactly what everybody kind of wants. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't think it's necessarily wrong that he's getting this shot.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. I'm excited to finally get it over, like you said, because I want to see Drekus again. I do like Drekus fighting. I do enjoy watching him fight because he puts on a performance. He does go out there with a unorthodox way of winning, and that's just the thing, he wins. So it's fun to see it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, looking at what No Chill's saying in the chat, that he's massively overrated. Again, I don't see that. I mean, he is a bit of a point fighter, so I can understand that it's not the fireworks you're looking for, but the wins are there. I mean, like, because that's the thing. You could say that about Bilal. I mean, a lot of people do say that about Bilal all the goddamn time. I mean, that he's boring, he's boring, he's boring. He gets the win. Is he
Yeah,
got the wins? I mean, he got the wins over and over and over again. The two. I mean, I really, I'm in this weird spot because I'm not like a huge Israel Adesanya glazer or anything, but I'm just, I'm put some respect on the champion's name is basically, where I'm looking at it right now. But again, huge test in Dricus, and you're right. Dricus is one of these guys that every single time, because got to remember with Dricus when he was coming up, he was the guy that everybody was counting out fight after fight. He had the whole breathing thing. Everybody
yeah.
thought that he was always winded, all this kind of stuff. There was a million things of why Dricus wasn't going to be the champ. He's this and that, and every single fight. I mean, if you go back, a lot of times he was the underdog in fights that he probably should have been the favorite in, and he wins and wins and wins. So it's like he finds the way to win. I think that it's certainly possible. We'll see if the ground game plays a factor in that. Obviously, the takedowns were a big factor in the Strickland fight. See what Israel Adesanya can do about that. I like the fight. I'm not mad at it, and I don't mind it because again, everything goes right back to where the rest of the world wants it to be after this fight. If Izzy loses,
I think No Show MMA is correct. I think the best 185er is Yuri when he goes down a weight class.
I mean, maybe. I won't dismiss that outright, but I got to see it first. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm ready. I hope that's what happens. Because man,
We'll
that
see.
would really fuck some shit up.
You think he can make the weight though?
I mean, he doesn't cut any weight to make 205, is what I've heard. I mean, and he's always in just
Fair
like
enough.
phenomenal shape.
Well,
So,
that is true. He's never out of camp, that guy. So
yeah,
fair enough.
literally out of camp, like the camping, like it's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, out of the bush.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's see what happens in this fight. Hopefully, it'll be more entertaining than people are giving it credit for. I mean, there's so much gridlock at the top of that division that we really do need to get this fight out of the way, so before anything else can move. Sean Strickland is really not doing himself any favors with this whole I'm going to wait for it shit that he's doing. But if that's the way that it's all going to shake out, then maybe he does get the next shot. We'll have to see also what happens with Rob and Hamzat. If Hamzat gets the win over Rob, that could throw this whole conversation into a tailspin. I mean, people are kind of sleeping on that being a possibility. I mean, I am siding with Rob in that fight. However, it could very well go the other way, and that could be a complete 180 on everything we're talking about right now.
I want to say that Israel Adesanya is the most confusing dude ever because you are now in Perth, right? A place where you call home to your MMA career, and then you get custom shorts opportunities, and you don't do an Australian design or a Nigerian one here. Like you just do like a Nav, your boy in the group chat, the Chinese fire breath dragon shorts. Like I don't know like why didn't you do something cool for the Australian crowd? Get them.
Well, Izzy is from New Zealand, first of all, so
well, whatever.
two separate
Close enough.
countries.
God
Separate
damn.
countries.
Jesus Lord.
You're gonna have Henry's gonna be super mad at you. But yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, I'm not like we've talked about the custom shorts. I'm not necessarily like the hugest like lover of the custom shorts unless they are a super cool design. I haven't really seen too many that I've thought have been like above and beyond to the point where I'm like, wow, that's like really really cool. So whatever. I mean, if he wants it, I mean, they might still announce that. I mean, I don't know if did he say specifically that he did not want that? I mean,
no, you didn't see the shorts that he had?
they already released
yeah,
that.
they
Okay, I
released
did not see
pictures
that.
of it. Yeah, it's
Gotcha.
just black with like fire on them, and then
Oh, okay.
Drinkus has the South American,
South
or not
African.
South
Yeah,
American,
gotcha.
South African.
Right. Okay, well, whatever. Custom shorts aside, I just want it to be an interesting fight, and I really would like to see Israel Adesanya come back and be the guy that he once was. I mean, I'm holding out hope that he's still in it somehow. I mean, like, and again, this is not coming from like some huge Israel Adesanya fan. I mean, I've been the first person on the in the MMA community to call him out on all of the cringy bullshit. That's my entire channel was founded on calling out cringy bullshit in MMA. He was a target many times. So, I'm not like trying to hit the glaze too hard on him, but again, he was a very dominant champion. I don't want to believe that it's completely out the window just off of one bad performance.
It's just crazy to me that we have to we have to come up with reasonings why this person should show up, and he really only has 3 losses. Like, and what 2 we saw, like, so I
Yeah,
don't know.
no, I mean you're making good points exactly. So I think that's one of those things. It reminds me a little bit, obviously very different circumstances, but just in the very general sense, it reminds me of when John Jones was coming back and going to heavyweight, and everybody was saying that Cyril Gahn had more of a chance. So like, are you forgetting who John
Yeah,
Jones is? So
it's a good
and
point.
yeah, so I got to believe that there's still something in there. We'll see what happens, and I don't think that that's necessarily an unpopular opinion, No Chilla, about everybody having custom shorts. I think that's an unpopular opinion as far as the UFC is concerned. The
Yeah,
UFC does not want
they have
that.
to be able to control the image and the money that comes in. If
Exactly.
everybody has their own branding and they can make money off their name, that means the UFC's not getting it anymore.
Exactly.
So,
That goes back to, the pre-Reebok deal era, and, the UFC has expressly gone away from that for financial reasons. So, all
all
right,
right,
let's look at a little bit more of this card here. We got Kai Kara France versus Steve Ursig. I think everybody is really riding with the homie Steve Ursig, right? I mean, everybody likes Steve.
these numbers minus 160 for Steve's so crazy because he could be the champ right now. And I know for a fact Cara France is not, champ material. He is oh god, I was gonna say he is young, but 31 is kind of crazy. I thought he was a lot younger than that. I
I
just
mean, it's
don't
not
see it.
old, but,
It's not. It's like approaching your prime or in your prime, but like you better show me that this is your full form this fight because this is against again somebody who could be the champ right now. This is a great visual for everybody. Like, oh, maybe Kyle Car France is gonna creep into this picture, but
Well, and that's what I'm concerned about is Kai Kara France coming out like Kazama that we were talking about earlier on the last card here, coming out and being a hurricane that Urseg is not anticipating. That would be my initial gut feeling that there's potential for that. We'll see if Steve Urseg is one of these guys that is, unlike Gregorio, somebody who can actually weather that and stay in the pocket, because Kai Kara France is one of those like fast twitch kind of guys. He's very frenetic in his style. He's a quick mover. Urseg is a little bit more plotting, I would say. I think that is something that kind of worked to his detriment in the title fight with Pantoja. Pantoja was able to wrap him up pretty easily sometimes because he's not one of these guys that's really doing dynamic motions at a lot of points in the fight. So that would be my initial fear. If he can weather that, perhaps he's got a pretty good shot. I'm rooting for him. I like the guy. How can you root against the guy who's coming straight out of the IT office going into the octagon?
yeah, for sure.
But we'll see what happens there. I like that fight, though. I think it's a good co-main. I like this fight a lot as well. I don't think a lot of people are
Counting Dan Hooker out,
yeah,
bad
just
idea.
yeah, they're just I think that everybody has this mindset that Dan Hooker is just washed for some reason. I mean, he's been proven that he's not washed. I don't know where this is coming from. I guess 12 losses will do that. I'm not trying to downplay that part of it, but at the same time, dude, I'm riding with Dan, man. I mean, he's a tough dude.
This is a perfect, wrench to throw in the division because people are thinking Gamrot arguably should be up there, for getting title contention talks. And if Dan Hooker does this one, that's just what we need to throw a muck in it where people start questioning what's next.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that Dan Hooker's terrible tattoos are going to help or hurt him in this fight?
Dude, okay. Let me actually stand on business. The leg tattoos are kind of cool. Like
I don't think I've seen those.
the Roman guard kind of like it's like a shield kind of thing on both of his legs. It's a cool concept. Doesn't maybe work great, but it looks fine. Now the one on his chest and back and whatever else he's got going on now cuz you can see this picture is not updated right here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And when he shows him into the ring, he's probably going to look like a fucking madman. But
I mean the fact that he has the chest tattoo that's got the axes and those things, the swords and axes, and there's not the appropriate number of
yeah,
points to equal up. That's a really terrible look. And his stomach tattoo looks like a straight up rash, just,
yeah,
just right across the stomach.
yeah, when wait till you see the leg tattoos. It is listen, if I could say one thing, it's a cool design, but why did you need to tattoo it? Why didn't you just buy metal shin guards like the Roman guards or whatever you were going for?
Right.
You
Well,
got money, dog. Like you can
sure.
just buy this shit.
Well, all jokes aside, do you think that the wrestling of Gamrot's going to be the deciding factor here, though? Because I think that this is, looking like a little bit of a styles make fights kind of fight.
I hope Dan Hooker, I always have this idea like, oh, when you're going up against a wrestler, surprise them. That you're gonna get the surprise submission or something. I don't know if it's gonna be this one, but I'm always rooting for it. You know, get a surprise, triangle choke or something. Just shoot it up, throw it out there, get it done. And the size difference is not too much, but from what I remember, Gamrot's not that big. Like him and Fazeev are like when they were fighting, they didn't look too far off. But Dan Hooker's big. Like he's a bigger dude. Him and Jalen Turner were kind of closer.
Well, that's why I'm worried about the wrestling a little bit for Dan's sake, is because he's a little bit shorter. He's Gamrot, that is. He's a little bit shorter. He's a little bit stockier. Dan is tall and lean. There is potential for him to get muscled a little bit in that regard. If he gets clinched up, he might be able to get taken down that way. Gonna have to really try to keep it on the feet. This is sort of one that I think the conventional wisdom at least is that if it goes to the ground, it's Gamrot. If it goes, stays on the feet, it's Hooker.
Well, you got to imagine too. It's like Gamrot is a wrestler, but how often is he wrestling somebody who's taller with longer legs? So, it is hard to get the single legs with tall people. They have the stilts that they can just back up with, and like it's hard to get the other one, to grab it or trip it. It's too far away. So I don't know. Will Gamrot be able to be creative enough to get it to the ground without, it being up against the cage, him just shooting a single leg and holding it for a second? And then we're
Sure.
sitting here thinking, is he going to lift him? Is he going to like lock his hands? Like, is he going to do something? And then we just have a stalemate. So,
Yeah. Then there's potential for that to be the case because Hooker will not go down easy if he can avoid it. I mean,
yeah.
he's not one of those guys that's going to accept a position. So, and yet again, No Chill making a good point is that it would be nice if the new rules were implemented for all of these fights, this one included. Because the fact that they're sitting on the rule change is annoying. I mean, I think that they said it takes effect in October, I believe is what I heard.
Mhm.
So it sucks that it's not in place now, but that is going to be a big change to all fights. So keep that in mind. In the back of your mind going forward is that come October things are going to be a lot different when people have that one hand on the ground. Because we actually saw a little bit of that on the card that we were just talking about. There was that one instance. I forget which fight it was, but I know that it was.
Yeah, we were confused. Why'd they stop it? Like, I thought this was legal now or
Right.
something,
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
the
It
whole
was.
case was.
It was Jason Herzog and an abundance of caution because he's been on the bad end of some calls lately. So I
Yeah.
think that I think all the referees are trying to be on their P's and Q's, which is good. But at the same time, it leads to some weird situations. But regardless, this will be an interesting fight. Another fight that I really like. This is actually the fight I'm looking forward to. I'd say the most aside from the main event. So, all right, moving on to Ivasa versus Rosenstrike. I mean, we've talked about Ty many, many times, man. I think that Rosenstrike is just a more well-rounded mixed martial artist. I think Ty is a big knockout guy who has zero when it comes to the fundamentals. I hate having to be down on my guy Ty. He's a good dude. I like him as a person. It's nothing personal. It's just every time. I mean, like the fact that when you go down, you don't get back up ever.
Mhm.
I mean, I just think that Rosenstrike is just better in a full fighter sort of sense. So I got to kind of ride with Rosenstrike, but I mean, there is potential for the knockout. What do you think?
Um, they are gonna stand the entire time. That's a given. It ain't gonna go to the ground. So time might have a chance. We might get to see the shoey. You don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there is some potential for Rosenstrike to, do some clinchy stuff and maybe try to get a takedown if it's convenient. But I would suspect that he's not going to be hunting for it. You know what I mean? So it's really going to be a matter of where the fight goes, what positions they're in the cage and whatnot. But either way, I mean, I just think that Rosenstrike. I mean, and this is not to say that Rosenstrike is elite in any sense, really. I mean, he is okay at best. Yet another one in that heavyweight sort of cyclone that we got going on. This big roundabout, the merry-go-round that's going on at heavyweight. He's certainly in that. On that merry-go-round as well. But I just think he's just better. And Ty is just consistently showing that he is not at the highest level. And I hate to say that. I would like to see him get better. I mean, like at one point, I forgot who he was training with, but he was training with some other guys, like some high level guys that were outside of his camp. And I was like, good, get out of your comfort zone a little bit, learn from these people. It just doesn't seem like he does.
Yeah, I agree.
So we'll see what happens there. This fight is the other fight I'm looking forward to the most. This is Li Jinliang, Li Jinliang versus Carlos Praetis. Carlos Praetis, of course, coming off of that beautiful body knee knockout that he got. Body shot knockout for Carlos Praetis in his last fight, going up against the Leech, who has had such a tough time of it lately.
Yeah, I can't wait to see Lee. I hope he wears a suit. It's
The
going to be a
suits.
good day.
Yep.
And when he gets in the ring, I want him to, come back with a good with a bang. You're a minus 260. Carlos Praetos honestly is riding high right now. We're pretty high on this dude. I know fighting nerds, and many people may not know about him, but if you do, you're maybe overrating him a little bit because he's only just had one finish. Like, come on.
Fair. Yeah, that is fair. Lee is a plus 260. He's the underdog in this
Oh
one.
yeah,
And
well, yeah.
yeah, but but it's a heavy underdog, and so this is a fight that he really does need to win in order to stay at least somewhere within any kind of conversation. Because I mean, as I had said, he's one of those guys that just seems to be the victim of some harsh matchmaking at times. He's been a sacrificial lamb to a lot of these guys, unfortunately. Praetis could be that if he is that dude, but this is one of those fights that I forget the one we were talking about a while back, but you said that about somebody else where it's like this is the fight that you should win this fight.
Yeah.
It's one of those kinds of situations. And he really needs to get that, especially as that plus money. I mean, that's pretty attractive. I would say if he's really going out there and fighting with all of his heart to stay in that somewhat elite conversation.
See, and he's been gone for so long. Maybe he just had to fill out the last fight of his contract, and maybe he's just coming back, get this payday, and call it a quits. I mean, we don't know.
That could
So,
be true. That's a good point as well. And we had talked about that a little bit with Chandler, just the sense of you don't know what's going on in the personal life. You don't know where their heads are at all the time. I mean, there's always potential for that to be the case. So we just got to see what version of Jin Liang shows up. But I mean, I'm just looking forward to Praetis because I mean, the guy. I said it after his last win. I'll say it again. We talk about the Muay Thai style coming over into mixed martial arts at the highest levels and what that can do. And I'm liking seeing a guy utilizing that effectively. I watch so much one, I watch a ton of one championship, and these guys are, in the Muay Thai fights throwing such crazy shit and with the intensity and disregard for their physical safety a lot of times. I mean, they're going out there and straight up brawling, and the clinch situations are intense as well. I mean, we talk a lot about what it would be like to have somebody of that caliber with that style coming over. Praetis right now seems to be the guy that's trying to do that.
yeah, 100%.
So I like that fight, and I'm looking forward to that one. Tafa versus Walker, I mean, this should be a good win for Tafa theoretically, right?
Johnny Walker's brother, Walter,
Yep,
he's in like new shape apparently. I posted a picture of him
I did
on
see
a
that.
tweet.
Yeah,
So that doesn't surprise me. The genetics are always going to be there for them two dudes. They're just giant freaks of nature. But this dude seemingly is worse than Johnny Walker, which is very impressive. Like, to not be good at heavyweight is impressive. To be worse than Johnny Walker at times is super impressive. So
yeah. I mean, only 11-1, so I guess you can take that for what it's worth. Tafa, theoretically, you'd think would be slightly more skilled, but I also kind of class him in that same place as Ty, where it just doesn't seem like the Polynesian heavyweights have the fundamentals that they need. It breaks my heart to say that because I really would like to see them succeed. They're so tough. They can take such immense damage, but you get them on the ground and it's just over.
yeah,
I'm not necessarily saying that Walter is going to do that, but you'd think that if it doesn't go to the ground, he should do well staying on the feet. We'll see what ends up happening. Yeah, it is kind of crazy that we've got these lesser brothers of like fighters who have done better. That's word to Mo Usman on that one, right?
yep.
All right, as we go down a little bit, we don't need to go over every single fight here, but
Notice Luana Santos, of course.
yep, the Luana Santos. I thought that Casey O'Neal's other fight got canceled. That's right. Yeah, so she was supposed to fight Bladis, I believe. Teresa Bladis, I think, was her original fight. She's fighting Luana Santos now. It's a good fight. Casey O'Neal, tough chick, man. I mean, this is gonna be a big test for her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm
So
excited to see her again. She came back real quick.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. She's staying active, and I like her style too. So that's a good fight to look out for. And and then Mr. Jenkins, Mr. Shoulder injury coming up against the bum Herbert Burns.
Yeah, that
Uh,
one's crazy. The plus 550 minus 950 is actually very warranted if you're facing Herbert Burns. Plus 550 for Herbert Burns is still not enough for me to like bet on it. Like that is crazy. This dude is so bad.
yeah, I mean,
This is
again,
the brother card. What is this?
yeah, we were just talking about the brother of Johnny Walker. This is, of course, the brother of Gilbert Burns, and you want to talk about lesser brothers. That is, I think, to a T, Herbert Burns. I mean, that last fight was such an atrocious performance. But just to play devil's advocate here, Jenkins, I mean, after the injury, he did come back. He got a win after that, I believe. So, he's back up, if I'm not mistaken. I
Lost
think
to
that.
Shepe.
Oh, I take it back. There you go. Okay, so.
Knocked out too.
Well,
So,
then there you go. Okay, so that I mean,
but
that proves the
Herbert
point.
ain't doing that. Like, come on.
Definitely not. But I mean, but it proves the point that at least Jenkins is not, he's not proving to be some kind of crazy elite guy. So I guess there is potential for maybe the jiu-jitsu to shine through for Herbert. If he can take him down, get it to the ground, that could be a good deciding factor for him. That might be decent plus money in that. But I mean, bet at your own risk, man. We're talking real bottom of the barrel there.
Yeah.
And that I think is pretty much about it. I mean,
I'll make one last note right here. Tom
sure, go ahead.
Nolan, the
Yeah.
Australian Jalen Turner. I mean, he's here, so
I remember talking about Tom Nolan on the last fight that he had, and saying that he had gotten rocked pretty bad in that fight, though. I'm pretty sure that was him. Yeah, we had said that he was up against that dude who was fighting real kind of sloppy, like he was kind of low IQ sort of situation. I forget which fight that was, but it was he had gotten rocked. He came back and finished the fight. I think it was one of those like crazy first round type of deal, if not early second round. But
no, yeah, first round, yep.
First round. So he did end up getting the job done, but he did get touched. So he's got to be careful leaving his chin open. He's touchable guy because he was staggered there for a second.
Yeah, 100%.
So
can't wait to see him though.
And yeah, and then one last one, just to briefly touch on it. I do like this fight though, San Kanan versus Ricky Glenn. Two guys that sort of never really lived up to the highest of the highs, but both tough guys. I mean, there's potential for that one to at least be entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, 34 and 35, if they're both has-beens. Actually, Ricky Glenn looks like he's moving up a weight class. So, I mean, I guess it might be interesting.
Yeah, just something to touch on. But that's about it for 305. And of course, that we are going to be talking about all of those fights right here on next Monday's stream. So watch the fights on Saturday, come back on Monday, and we will go over every single fight just as we did tonight about the last card. So that has been last week's fights. You can find me here on the Yama channel. That's youtube.com/@YamaShow. I am at Yama Show on all social media as well. And Chase, I know that you can tell them where they can find you.
You can find me on, first we'll do Twitter, at Creative Partin, Partin. And then on YouTube, you can find me youtube.com/@CPSmalls.
There you go. Make sure you follow my boy. And we both do individual watch-alongs for these cards as well. So if you want to hang out with either of us for the fights, you're more than welcome to do that. Chat with us. Chase has the Discord going. I'm sure if you're nice and of age, he will give you the link to the Discord, and you can join us in there and keep up to date with all of the happenings going on. We got a good group of guys in there, and they stay very active, making sure everybody is up to date on the latest and greatest in the world of mixed martial arts. Until next week, everybody, thanks very much. Have a great one. Oh, and one more thing to note before we get out of here. The Contender Series starts on tomorrow, on Tuesday,
Yep.
tomorrow. So we will both be doing watch-alongs for that, right? You're doing watch-alongs for the Contender Series? All right, so yet again, both of us doing watch-alongs for the Contender Series as well. This week, I believe I'm going to have to talk to Vitz King. I might be with Vitz King. I don't know what the deal is with that, but either way, one way or another, I will be here. Chase will be here as well, so hang out with us on the Dana White Contender Series as well. Checking those out, and of course, we've got the end of The Ultimate Fighter coming up as well. Good riddance to that. So until next time, everybody, have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the fights. And most importantly, fight on, y'all.
Hey.